place is Eldoret in Kenya. The time is round about lunch hour. The assailant, a man who's traveled more than 300 kilometers to this site, purchased an axe and is laying in the wait. The victim, a medical student. Her crime, this man had invested in love and with overtures towards him, and she was not reciprocal. The result, a murder. I wish this is something we could say is one-off, but we've had such or similar stories about love stories gone bad, rejected proposals that have ended with pain, or betrayals that have been sealed off with burials. It need not be this way. There seems to be something in the next generation that speaks about the lack of a capacity to detect when it is time to end a relationship and be able to end it with such decorum that no feelings are left unneedlessly hurt and that life continues to move. No one needs to die because a relationship ended. Unless this happens, we'll still keep grinding axes, at times maybe literal axes, and we'll keep raising a generation incapable of ending relationships that need to end or persisting in relationships that have no business continuing. We need to raise a generation with authentic relationships and authentic resilience. The countdown began. It was 10, then soon 9, and would whittle down to 5. The location was a several-story building that was being brought down through controlled explosion. The reason is something had gone wrong in the process of putting this building together. Well, I didn't know all the technical details. I suspect there was something wrong with the foundation, or maybe the workmanship had become so compromised that the building was deemed unsafe to keep standing, unsafe for any potential user of that building, or unsafe for other people around. And the result, the building had to be pulled. This is true in architecture, but is also at times sadly true in the architecture of building human relationships, especially relationships we want to consider to lead to the institution of marriage. But in the same way that buildings are not just brought down haphazardly, but they are brought down in a careful manner to make sure that only that which needs to be brought down is brought down. It's a skill that can be transferred to the entire arena of building and, may I add, breaking relationships when that is called for. My name is Saya Jackson. This is Authentic Conversations about chats you and I avoid. And this is the second season in which we are focused about raising an authentic generation. And today, we are focused about breaking relationships with a heart. Welcome. When we re-examine our story, we've been following the story written by an old Roman doctor. His name is Luke, or what we call Dr. Luke. He's captured the story as compiled from most reliable sources to put together the book of Luke, and in his quoting of what Jesus said about the narrative we call the Prodigal Son, found in the book of Luke 15 from verses 11 and continuing. Let's have a listen.
Jesus continued, "There was a man who had 2 sons. The younger one said to his father, 'Father, give me my share of the estate.' So he divided his property between them. Not long after that, the younger son got together all he had, set off for a distant country, and there squandered his wealth in wild living. After he had spent everything, there was a severe famine in that whole country, and he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself out to a citizen of that country, who sent him to his fields to feed pigs. He longed to fill his stomach with the pods that the pigs were eating, but no one gave him anything. When he came to his senses, he said, "How many of my father's hired servants have food to spare, and here I am starving to death? I will set out and go back to my father and say to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired servants.' So he got up and went to his father. But while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion for him. He ran to his son, threw his arms around him, and kissed him. The son said to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son.' But the father said to his servants, 'Quick, bring the best robe and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. Bring the fattened calf and kill it. Let's have a feast and celebrate. For this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found.' So they began to celebrate.
And welcome back. When Luke describes these relationships, in the particular scenario, you realize there is relationships formed, relationships broken, and some relationships reestablished. In the journey of moving the prodigal son, the one who left from inauthentic, destructive, and back to authentic relationships, he had to begin building the muscle to recognize the signs that a relationship needs to be broken or has ended, and the sign about the need to move to another relationship. So sadly, he had to learn it the hard way, but we could avoid that. His failure to avoid wrong relationships ended up with him being forced with the inevitable decision that he needed to end, or sometimes it looks like some relationships were just ended in his face. It's not like he was going all around dumping the wrong people. At least on one occasion, there were friends whom helped him to waste his substance, and then after that, they dropped him like something hot, poisonous, and illegal. But then, we who have the advantage of hindsight can now be able to look at this story and be able to pick lessons that will be important for the next generation about the whole scenario of breaking relationships when they need to be broken. Let me sidebar a little here. Let me detract a little. You notice in the case of the prodigal son, majority of the relationships did not end badly. They began badly. Like the example about the building earlier in this cast, it is foundational work that had been compromised. And it didn't matter how high he wanted to build, it reached certain points where certain relationships could not be supported with the kind of foundation he had laid. So oftentimes, breakups are inevitable, not because things are ending badly, but if we're just candid and reflective enough, we'll realize they began badly. You see, relationship beginnings are just like the beginnings of anything. It's the same way like a building begins. What we put in the beginning determines the height to which whatever thing we are trying to come up with will go, and determines the stability. Or as I put in a good mantra, it says, how you win them is how you keep them. He won some friends with money, and when the money was gone, he lost the friends, because that's how life works. How you win them is how you keep them. Aren't you glad God won us out of love? Aren't you glad God wins us over by his sacrifice? Because he knows how he won us, his love is inexhaustible, is how he will keep us by his love. But again, I come back to my slight distraction on this, which is because we're about to look at the whole question about breaking up and everything, we need to realize that breakups are going to end up being a necessary part. And that's why this is a difficult conversation or an authentic conversation to have, because many individuals come to my space for counseling, either during dating or at times come to confide during marriage, and you realize the rain began beating them a whole lot way far behind. Things were in bad shape. And part of it is because of who people seek advice from. Many dating individuals look for advice from fellow dating individuals with no experience about marriage. And though they're friends and their confidence may be well-meaning, they're just inexperienced. They don't know about marriage, so they don't know how to choose a partner with marriage in mind. They may know a thing or two about choosing a partner with prom in mind, or choosing a partner with the next function in mind. That may work. But when it comes to choosing a partner with marriage in mind, a person who's dating, who's never married, is not probably the best source of advice. And so again, it begins badly with who we seek advice from, and when it ends up badly. So, end of my distraction and coming back to the main point. What are the signs that you could tell from the story of the prodigal son that some relationships needed to be ended, and how do we bring that into the experience of nurturing the next generation to be able to be good at determining and detecting when a relationship has outlived its usefulness or is actually dangerous and needs to be ended? Number one, the account of Luke says when this boy receives his wealth, he goes to a faraway country. He does not remain at a place he can grow the wealth. He does not remain at a place he can have accountability and support. He does not remain at a place where he can be held accountable. He moves away completely. And in a previous episode, we've been talking about the role and the place of purpose in all of this. And you realize these relationships is going to form are taking him away from any semblance of stability and purpose. So one sign that should already have been ringing in his head is when things are moving him away from the target or his target for life. He's a son who's grown up in what looks like an environment of means. He probably should be expanding, he should be growing, he should be impacting. But the kind of relationships he's procuring are the kind of relationships that are moving him away from target. And so, as it is with the prodigal son, so it should it be with each one of us, that when we are in a relationship that is moving us away from target, and which makes me again re-emphasize the need to understand one's purpose. When you're in a relationship and it is taking you away from your purpose, or you're taking the other person away from their purpose, it means that it's probably a sign that there's something seriously unhealthy with that relationship, and you may need to consider stepping back or very soon ending it altogether. So yeah, you've been dating for 3 months, your appetite for church has gone down, your devotion to God is nearly non-existent, your purity both of thought and of body and of practice are all daily violated and compromised. This might be a bad sign. This may actually be a sign that this is a kind of relationship that is not going to nurture you and not going to go very well. So it's taking you off the target that is clearly delineated by your life's compass, which is your purpose. The boy's relationships takes him away from the father, it takes him away from the place of purpose, it takes him away from the place of providence, it takes him away from the place of power. So any relationship that is doing that to you, any relationship, and I'm speaking in the context of dating, because biblically marriage is till death do us part. Any dating relationship that is taking you away from God's purpose, God's providence, God's power for your life is taking you away from your target. And you may need to give it a serious consideration about stepping back or very soon ending it altogether. Danger sign number one. Danger sign number two is what we call traction. Traction is the thing that happens between the sole of your feet and the surface. It's a thing that allows tires to be able to have some movement along a road. That's why we make those serrated lines on tires, so that they can have traction, they can have some grip. Now, this boy, when he receives the money, he's been given resources. That's some form of traction. Because if the money was well used, if the means were well invested, he'd be able to go further, faster. But the kind of relationships he gets into are the kinds which make it to be wasted. So danger sign number 2 is this boy should be leaving is because the relationships he is forming are not healthy. They're making him lose traction. He is not having forward momentum. He is not having the ability to get going. They're making him lose traction. The first category was things that are taking him completely off the target, the calling for his life. But then the second one is the things that are even reducing his ability. They are compromising his gifting. They are chipping away at his talent. They are ruining and altering his personality, or compromising or shelving or stifling his individuality. Anything that does the above to you is something that is making you to lose traction. And when you lose traction, you're not able to move in the direction of your target. Hurt people hurt people. In other words, individuals who are hurt themselves go ahead to hurt others. And we may find ourselves with relationships with individuals who are feeling inadequate, or who are hurt, or who are hurting themselves. I'm not saying they are not deserving of a relationship, but I'm saying they are deserving first of healing before they can join in a relationship. Some of them actually need therapy before they can be able to join into a relationship. And so you may find at times you join with people like that who, in order for them to feel secure, they have to make you feel insecure. In order for them to feel powerful, they have to make you lose power. In order for them to feel like they have traction, they have to make you stagnate. All this category of people are individuals who make you lose your tractions. Those kind of arrangements are not consistent with God's will for you. Please remember, when Paul was trying to get a metaphor to describe the human body, he described something that was revolutionary in his time. He said, what? Know ye not that your bodies are the temple of the Holy Spirit who lives in you, and that you are not of yourselves, but you are bought by a price. So worship God by whom you are purchased, which is powerful. Again, a minute of teaching here. In Paul's days, the temple, the central piece of the temple was the place for the pagans, was a place where the deity revealed himself. So that Paul could begin describing that the all-powerful, huge God of heaven was not dwelling in some place but had elected to live in an individual was revolutionary an idea. But lest I lose you, Paul describes and says, hey, this God of heaven wants to dwell in us. And if this God of heaven wants to dwell in us, who are we to keep giving ourselves to individuals who abuse us, individuals who belittle us, individuals who put us low, individuals who make us nothing? So in other words, if you're losing traction, you're not treating God's temple properly. And it's probably time you paused and asked God to show you clearly whether it's time to step back or whether it's time to end this respective relationship. So clue number 1 for the boy is that the relationships he was forming were taking him away from his target. Clue number 2 is that the relationships he was forming were making him lose traction. And then there was the third incident, or actually the second and the third incidents. The second incident is when this category of relationships it formed, when he lost his money, they dropped him. Then he went to another person. He formed another relationship, maybe out of convenience, maybe out of expediency. I don't know the reason. And this person could not see any bigger worth in him, but assigned him to the pigs. And it seems that that entire arrangement was not so beneficial that this young man was so hungry that he didn't, but he could have eaten the pods. You see, in both cases, this man is faced with danger. Danger number 1 is friends who leave him with nothing and leave him at the point he has nothing. He's exposed. He is vulnerable. He is open to every other abuse with his means gone. And yet the friends he had imagined he had left him at this hour of need. Then the second one is one who puts him in a supposed situation of help, but where he is treated less than is his value, or is treated way less than is fit for any human beings, to the point of even contemplating eating food that is meant for the pigs is not a friendly position to be. I studied in a high school that we kept pigs, and I just work with that visual of a guy considering to steal from the pigs the food. I don't know, but the visual that works in my mind is when you see the teeth of a pig and how voracious their appetite is. When you want to consider like, I want to pick their food, you imagine them happening on you the same way they're happening on the food, and you probably hold back. So maybe the reason this guy holds back has nothing to do with dignity, but has to do with everything with fear. But again, I don't want to digress until I lose a point. In both cases, with a pig farmer and with the other friends who he partied and clubbed and wasted his substance, this young man finds himself in a place where he is under threat. So the third T, you notice we're going with the theme of T's as signs of clues that we need to give up on certain relationships. Is the first one was if things are taking us off our targets. Number 2 clue is things are making us lose traction. But then number 3 is things that are a real target. And targets are at 2 levels. For a Jew, which seems to have been the immediate audience and the implied reference of this prodigal son, for a Jew to be brought to the point of keeping a pig, it was a direct risk to his own reputation, because they considered the pigs unclean, and eating pigs was going to be unclean. But here is a case of a boy who comes from a wealthy background, and the only help he can find from a supposed helper is to unite him with pigs, was a threat not only to him physically, but it was also a threat, number 1, to his reputation. So a potential sign that a certain relationship is ripe for consideration for termination is when it portends a threat to your very own reputation, when it is people gossiping about you, when it is people smudging your name, dragging you through everything, or people who even blackmail you, who tell you if you don't give them sex, they will go say funny things, or people who entrap you in sex so that they may continue blackmailing you. When a relationship has all the hallmarks of individuals who want to blackmail you or to misuse you or to degrade your reputation if you hold certain Christian values and biblical values, and an individual wants them to be brought down so that some appetite, sexual or ego or otherwise, can be satisfied, this is probably a red flag of an individual you need to consider ending the relationship. The other threat is apparent. It's physical. It is not, a woman's face is not designed as the resting place for a man's limbs. Okay, so any man inflicting such damage to a woman is not worthy of that relationship. And the converse is true. Any woman hitting a man is not worthy of that relationship. And at times the abuse is not just physical. There's a lot of emotional, there's a lot of verbal, there's a lot of psychological abuse. If you're going through a relationship that way, it doesn't matter how well he treats you or he takes you to, or she takes you to nice places, where there is physical, verbal, or emotional abuse in the context of dating, the next generation needs to be equipped to know this is a red flag. The reason is simple. You see, marriage does not exist to solve the problems that exist in dating. Marriage has its unique sets of challenges. Marriage is going to be the longest negotiated arrangement under the sun that the next generation will ever have to walk in. And the reason that is the case is because they will be changing through the various seasons of life and through the various stages of marriage. And therefore it will be changing individuals negotiating with another changing individual. And therefore marriage does not quite have the time or the right environment, as it were, to resolve dating issues. And so marriage does not exist to solve dating things. And so what becomes misty or is misty during dating becomes foggy during marriage. It only intensifies because marriage comes with its own responsibilities, expectations, mechanics, kinetics, which when you add the challenges from dating into, it becomes quite foggy and quite the challenge. So the next generation needs to be equipped to understand these red flags, to interpret them for what they truly, clearly, and really are. And how do I suppose they will be doing this? Is if they understand what dating exists to do. There's a whole lot of confusion. People go to date because for them it's a quickest way to get sex, or it's a quickest way to get fame, or it's the quickest way to avoid boredom. Such ideas of getting into dating makes people get in for the wrong reasons or stay in for the wrong reasons, or makes them completely blind to things that could be very apparent. There's an African saying that says, a boy cannot see standing what an old man can see while seated. And a lot of that is very true at times with the blindness of dating, that those dating are unable to see what is clearly and plainly in front of them, yet those who are married are able to clearly pre-see it for them. But I believe the solution is to understand what's the purpose of dating. Dating is simply for two reasons. Reason number one is to understand the basic framework of your friend, or this person you intend to unite your eternal interests with. You understand their basic framework. The basic framework of an individual constitutes about what or who do they live for. What is it that animates them, and what is it that frustrates them? What is it that they can stand? What is it that they cannot stand? And yeah, it sounds like a lot of things, but it is very easy to see. A human being, we use the generic word a man. You know what a man is by what he laughs at and what frustrates him. Look at what makes somebody laugh or he finds amused. It tells you something about their basic framework. In the immediate previous setting, we were talking about dating. So you need to date variably, you need to date openly, so that men of experience can be able to give you some guidance. But the first objective of what dating is all about knowing what the basic framework of this individual is. A lot of the other flesh is often built now within marriage. That's when you're able to building from there. But you need to make sure that, just like we began with the building, that this framework that building is about to go on is a framework that is worth it, it is noble, it is just. Then the second thing that dating exists to do is to teach you how to negotiate with each other. Because as already mentioned, in the institution of marriage, you will be in a continuous negotiation as both of you change, evolve, grow, become different. You will need to learn to negotiate. Now that learning to negotiate begins in dating. You need to begin understanding, how does this person compromise? How does this person think? How does this person, those are things you do within dating. So when we free dating from being the place where we go to eat fries or go swimming or travel together, and begin understanding the reason behind the swimming and the fries and going out for all the various nice things we're doing during dating, then our dating experience will become more meaningful. Then it will become very clear what it is we are looking for. And then it will become easier when we begin understanding that, wait a minute, this person's framework and this person's inability to negotiate is a big red flag, and I have lost traction, I'm off target, and they are real threats. And just like it was with the stories of the building we began, then it becomes true. We need to begin celebrating the next generation when, with clarity, they reach the point they realize we need to end this relationship because where it is and where it's going is not healthy. Breakups are not always bad news. At times, they are the sign of success that we have actually achieved the understanding that we are not compatible. Let's celebrate that and let's lean into it. This is Authentic Chat about conversations I avoid, and let's keep the conversation.